Nikiski?
No. Soldotna. From Nikiski, Kenai to Soldotna.
Mm-hmm.
I tore up the whole peninsula, honestly. It's horrible. And I'm still making those amends today. So
I think that, many people in Alaska don't know that this exists here. They think maybe, not in Alaska, where we sometimes feel so removed from it. In many ways, just because, Alaska is separated from, seems like, the rest of the world. What would you like people to understand about human or sex trafficking here?
That it's happening here. It's happening right under everyone's nose. I would just want them to know that it's here and to be careful who you surround yourself with, and that if somebody wants to, somebody who's older than you and wants to take you out and wants to buy you all these things and wants to take care of you and wants to check their motives, that, make sure you know who this person is, because it's really easy to get sucked in, especially if you feel not worthy, because we're targets. When you see somebody who is sad, or you can see it on their face when they're not happy and when they're sad and when they need somebody to love them. And I would be careful if you find yourself in that position, to make sure you surround yourself with people that you trust.
How do you think that some of the abuse that you endured as a young child affected how you felt about yourself as a young adult?
Oh my goodness. Being molested and touched at that, at such a young age, and not even knowing what any of that means, or, and then holding it in and feeling yucky, and everything that comes with being molested as a child, it definitely affected how everything happened. I didn't feel good about myself. So I was constantly, seeking validation from men and people to love me. And I didn't have my dad, growing up, or a healthy father in my life. So that's what I looked for. I just needed to fill that void with anything, men, meth, money, whatever I could, to fill that void that I didn't get when I was little.
Can you help listeners to understand what the reality of human or sex trafficking in Alaska looks like?
You want me to share a little bit about what I did, what it looked like for me?
Yeah.
For me, it started out with obviously drug use, getting in with the wrong crowd. And before I knew it, I was selling drugs for somebody. And this somebody wasn't from here. So, he was from California, and they were getting stuff to the person here, and then it would come to me, So it basically, I didn't even know that I was going to be getting involved in anything like that until I owed him money, right? It was like, all of a sudden I owed this big drug dealer money, and I had no idea who this person was until they're showing up my doorstep and killing my dog, and then threatening my family, and then saying that I had to go with him to California to make the money back, or else my family was going to be hurt. And it was like, oh my gosh, all this started with was heroin on foil. And then I'm getting on a plane and I'm going to sell my body in California to make up so this person doesn't hurt my family. And I had 2 babies at the time when I had to do that.
You can take your time.
So, you just never know.
How do you think drugs influenced your decision-making at that time?
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because I needed it to survive. I felt like, I got to a point where I didn't know how to wake up without it. I didn't know how to take care of my kids without it. I didn't even know what that looked like at that time. So I did whatever I had to do. I thought I had to do to not be sick and to not see my kids hurt, or my family or anyone else. I got myself into some very, very dark situations. And I would have liked to say that it all ended there, but it didn't. Even after there was a man in California that ended up saving my life. And, and I thought he was just going to be,
just another guy, just another situation. And he ended up being different, and he ended up being kind, and he ended up letting me use his phone. And because when I got there, they took took my cell phone, took my driver's license, took everything, so I didn't have any way to contact my family or anything. And he let me use his phone, and this happened over a week. And I contacted my mom, and she sent me my driver's license and my birth certificate, and I was able to get, long story short, he took me to the airport, and I was able to come home. And even at that time, I was like, this is definitely God. This is definitely God. But it still wasn't enough. I didn't stop. So I got on the plane and I came home, and I had the next drug dealer pick me up at the airport in Anchorage, and I just kept going from there. Okay, well, now I'm home, but, I didn't stop doing drugs while I was there. I still was addicted. I still had no one. I got home and just started in the same thing, same toxic environment. And so it just got worse. If it can get worse, it got worse. After that, I ended up getting with another guy. I went to treatment. So I did get home, and I stayed out for a little bit longer, but then I ended up getting another DWI in 2013. And so they're like, you have to go to treatment. You have to do something. So it was basically a forced thing. So I was like, okay. So I went to treatment, stayed there. I ended up moving into the sober living house that they had with my 2 kids, and everything seemed to be going good. I stayed sober for almost 6 months. And then this guy messaged me on Facebook and was just like, what are you doing these days? And da-da-da. And before I knew it, he was just like, you look beautiful these days. What are you doing living at sober living? Come live at my house. And kids can have their own rooms. And I was just like, okay. And I did it. And I was right back out there. He also ended up selling drugs. Only this time I wasn't being trafficked, but he was involved in human trafficking. And this time I'm forced to be quiet, and I can't talk about it. And I'm witnessing the women and the children and the screams and the people, and am right in the middle of it, and I can't do anything. And so I ended up going to the police and telling them everything, and bringing them cell phones, and I brought them clothing, all sorts of things, trying to give them proof of what was going on. But they didn't believe me. I was just a joke, and they knew how I was all messed up on drugs, and they immediately, without any hesitation, took me straight to the hospital. Took my kids emergency style, the OCS was there present, took my kids immediately as soon as I told them everything that was going on, and brought me to the hospital for a psych evaluation. And that was the last time I seen my kids for a year. When I woke up and I didn't have my kids, my kids were taken in August, and so August, September, October, so November, so 4 months. It took me 4 months to finally surrender and go to long-term treatment after they were taken. It was okay, this is serious, it finally hit me. So, yeah.
Can we back up a little bit? When did you feel that you lost control over your situation?
I don't feel like I ever had control. I feel from that very first time that I drank, I was pretty young, when I was 12 when I started getting drunk, but even younger than that, picking up drinks here and there, birthday parties and barbecues and stuff at my family's house. But from the very first time I drank, I blacked out. The very first time. There was no drunk. It went straight from sober to completely belligerent wasted every single time. So I think that I know when I regained control, but I really don't know when I lost it. It was from the beginning.
It seems like a self-medication.
Oh, definitely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about what your life was like in California. Did you have your children with you?
No. No, I left the kids with their dad, and he knew what I was doing. He, knew the threats and knew everything that was happening, and he dropped me off at the airport, and we were still together. We were together, and yeah. So then there was that too. Like, how could he? Why isn't he standing up for me? Like, what? But really, there was nothing he could do either. So no, I went by myself. It just was, walking the streets with 2 guys following a ways behind me, being scared to death, going to casinos, being like forced to hit on old men. I did a lot of things to like wiggle out of situations though, like a lot. Like I was always like figuring out some sort of way, or I would like make myself sick, or I would do something to get myself out of that situation in that moment. A lot of taking pictures of me and videos came along with all that. Could still be videos. You know what I mean? It's a scary even thing to think about. But it was horrifying. I think I was there for about a month, but it seems like it was a lot longer.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how you were able to escape that in California?
Well, God, I was just sitting at a gas station at the bus stop, and a guy pulled up in a truck and asked me if I wanted to go. And at this point, I was just completely hopeless. Like, I was just like, if this guy kills me, then okay. Like, I just was really feeling hopeless and discouraged and defeated. And that's when God shows up, With that whole situation with that guy, I actually ended up, the first couple times I met up with him, the first time I stole an NFL ring from him to bring it back to my drug dealer. So I'd come back with something. And then, I stole something else the next day and then the next day. And then I had told him, I said, look, like if I didn't take those things, like I don't know what would happen to me, and I wouldn't be able to come back here, and everything. And he understood, which is crazy because it was the stuff I stole was a lot. He just let me use his phone, and then I got to talk to my mom, and I got to talk to my kid. Well, my son, I missed his first steps and everything while I was gone, but I got to hear his voice and, tell my daughter I love her and everything else. And, everyone back home at first, like my mom found out the real reason because I had to call her, but everybody at home before, when I left, I told them that I had won a shopping spree. I know. I know. I told him I won the shopping spree and it was in California and it was going to be so amazing because I didn't want anyone to worry and I didn't want anyone to investigate and I didn't want anyone getting hurt. So it was like, if I just lie and tell them this, then nobody's going to think anything of it. Just that I won a shopping spree and I'm going to California for a week and I'll be back. But then the weeks, right, turned into more weeks. And then it was a month. And then, my mom's getting a call from me. I'm just bawling. Like, please help me. So,
did she catch on at that point?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. And she never even actually asked. She didn't even ask. I didn't even tell her. I just said, I need to get out of here and I don't have my driver's license. I need you to please send me the stuff I need so that I can come home. Mm-hmm. And I didn't even tell her anything. And she actually she didn't even hear this whole story up until like 2 years ago when I spoke out at Nikiski. I spoke at an event for Priceless and she heard it for the first time. Mm-hmm.
What is Priceless?
Priceless is an organization that helps men and women and children get out of human trafficking. They're actually really big here in Anchorage. I actually worked with them for a couple of years now, being a mentor and for other women coming out of human trafficking. She bawled. She didn't say anything. She's heard my whole story now, but it's still hard for her to hear. She can't listen to it. She doesn't like to listen to it, and I don't force her. I'm like, she knows when I'm going to be speaking or when I go. It's just better for her not to, I think, because it's just damaging for her.
Where do you think you found the strength to escape?
Well, I've always had it in me, I have God in me. I wanted to get home to my kids and I took the chance that I had. I wasn't going to say no to this guy who was trying to help me, and And everything worked out so smoothly. Like, it wasn't difficult. It wasn't hard. I didn't have